The alarm cut through the station like a razor through silk. On my display bloomed a procession of human ships, nose to tail, running lights dimmed, hulls blacked. They broadcast a list of names thousands soft as a lullaby on carrier wave. Their vector pointed straight into the Mnemosyne Sea, a forbidden region where memory condenses into storms that strip minds to chalk. I am Rinith of the Velkarn, junior archivist and licensed hoarder of truth. We warn, we record, we never forget. The humans. They formed a funeral, sang to the dark, and went in. The council chamber is a crown of stone and light. 43 species ring the bowl, translator fields flaring like heat mirages. The Mnemosyne sea roils on the hollow tank, luminous eddies, phosphor squalls, vortices braided with whisper signals from every mind it has ever touched. We call it a quarantine. We post beacons in all languages. We do not enter. Explain the human formation, says Chair Lumenthal, a crystal pillar older than my grand cores. It mimics funerary procession. It is a funerary procession, the human at the center platform answers. She wears formal black, a silver disc at her collar engraved with the sign for breath. Captain Mara Ibarra, Wakekeeper Convoy. We're retrieving a library? Laughter cracks from the Oris delegation, a rippling chorus. Humans spend fuel on grief, their swarm voice hums. Inefficient. Ibarra doesn't flinch. Grief is a bridge, she says. Across it, the living can carry the dead's meaning. At the word bridge my facets prickle. We Velkarn are bridges of a sort, memory spans, load rated, never allowed to sway. But meaning? Meaning erodes. Dr. Velkor, Chief Xenopsych, flickers beside me. Captain, you understand the Mnemosyne Sea destabilizes identity. The last incursion ended with an entire crew convinced they were the same person. Some never redifferentiated. We're not resisting it, Ibarra says. We're harmonizing. Breath, rhythm, shared narrative, collective regulation is older than starflight. We'll dampen the resonance that tears minds apart. Then we'll enter the lumen vault and extract what can still be carried. And if you trigger a forgetting cascade, Thul's voice is frost. We will not let your ritual infect our laws. We won't ask you to follow us, Ibarra replies. Just to hold the line if we fail. A murmur rolls the chamber. The Velkarn doctrine is simple, memory is scaffolding, remove a beam and the structure fails. I stand to formally object. When my facets align, the translators cast my cord into air. Velkarn principle, no sanctioned loss. The sea is a necrotic zone. If a library is trapped, it is already dead. We mark, we mourn, we preserve the warning at distance. Junior Archivist Rinith, the chair acknowledges. I expect assent. Instead, the human offers me a question like a blade. If your world burned, Archivist, and the only surviving record was a song trapped in a storm, would you die to hear it once, so you could teach it to a child who isn't yours? My answer is reflex. We do not die for songs. She nods, as if she expected nothing else. We do. The hollow tank shifts, a simulation of convoy entry. Fields spike, harmonics buckle, hulls scour. Their plan is madness packaged as choreography. But something in the curve sings phase shift, then flatten, expand, then release. Breath patterns. Heart rate entrainment. Old mammal tricks sharpened into a shield. I hate that I see the math. Give them a cordon, says a voice I never thought would risk consensus. Dr. Valcoria, if they damp the amplitude, we can observe a live crossing for the first time. Those facets dim, calculating liability. We forbid entry. We're going anyway, Ibarra replies. We are Wakekeepers. Our oath is to the carried. Security protocols rattle. The Council cannot legally fire on memberships that do not declare hostile intent. It can refuse support, revoke docking, cut trade. It cannot make them forget they're dead. The convoy turns toward the sea. My chest lattice tightens. Velkarn hearts are slow, still, mine stutters. You cannot stop the tide, the oars jitter. Better to build elsewhere. Or build a bridge, the human says softly, almost to herself. One breath at a time. Then you accept responsibility, the chair intones. For whatever you bring back. Ibarra lifts her disc and taps it twice. The hammer click lands in my bones. We always do. I sign the objection. I sign the request to deny aid. I sign the petition to lock the docks. And then, traitor that I am, I sign for a forward monitoring post at the sea's lip, and volunteer to staff it. A bridge must be measured from both banks. When the funeral lights dim and the engines flare, the convoy sings the names again. The chamber falls quiet. Even the oars hush. The first name is not human. It is a word in a language the Council erased from all indexes centuries ago. It tastes like copper. It hurts to hear. I realize, with sick clarity, why they must go. Some things collapse if you refuse to carry them. Some things only live because you do. The sea is not water. It is flux, memory-dense space-time curling into weather. It smells like cut rain and hot dust. It sounds like your name said wrong by a loved one long dead. The convoy angles into a trough between two storm bands, hulls linked by tethers, hull skins strobing with script that isn't language so much as rhythm etched into light. Mass breathing protocol active, Captain Ibarra transmits on open band. On my mark. Box inhale, 4. Hold, 4. Release, 4. Hold, 4. Tell me a name each cycle. Inhale, reply hundreds of throats. A metronome clicks through the radio hiss. I stand at the monitoring rail of the forward post, surrounded by Velkarn instruments, reliquaries of signal, shelves of frozen time. Dr. Velkor hangs nearby, crystalline edges fuzzed by stress. If this works, he murmurs, we will revise 40 years of psychophysics. If, I say. The first squall hits. Litany bleeds into static. Hull fields flex, not as barriers but as membranes. The convoy wavers, then steadies. On my scope, the sea's amplitude dips by a hair. Velkor's edges sharpen. They're actually flattening the profile. How? I can't stop the question tearing loose. Curiosity is a crack in Velkarn law. We cork it, always. Today it spills. Co-regulation, he says. Mammals calm each other. Packs keep rhythm to keep fear from spiraling. They're scaling it to starship. The sea amplifies isolation. They're refusing to be alone. A woman's voice, raw, cuts in. Name, Nor. Another, name, Javier. The aura sneer, but quieter now. The list builds a scaffold in my head. Names become rebar. I grip them, against doctrine. A surge, a rogue eddy slams the lead ship. The hull shivers. A chorus stumbles. Hold, Ibarra says, and her voice is iron. We serve, we don't stand. Let it lift you. Inhale. On camera, I watch the crews. Some cry openly, strapped into couches, palms pressed to haptic pads that pulse the convoy's shared heartbeat. Others speak to empty space, recounting recipes, jokes, lost arguments. It resembles prayer, except the God is one another. The sea throws up a shape, a schoolhouse I have never seen. Its door is red. Its window holds my reflection, except I am a blue-fleshed bipt, 8 years old and human, missing a front tooth. The image tugs at me like a magnet on wire. Velcor's hand clamps my shoulder. Don't follow it, he snaps. It is bait built from you. I don't have that memory, I say, but my voice shakes. The sea can construct lures from inference. It knows the spine of grief even if it lacks flesh. The convoy slides past. The schoolhouse dissolves into mist and names. The monitors hiccup, then stabilize. We are 400 clicks inside the boundary. No crew has split into duplicates. No one screams they are everyone. My doctrine stares at me, betrayed. Wakekeepers to all observers, Ibarra sends. Protocol 2, tell me a story you don't want to tell. Silence answers. Then, one by one, voices fill the channel. A Velkarn has no stories we don't want to tell. We tell all or nothing. We calcify truth. And yet, my progenitor slipped a shard, I hear myself say into a hot mic. She hid a name. I archived the record anyway. Velcor whips toward me, aghast. The admission is a breach. It is also a pressure release. My lattice loosens. The sea loses another tooth. We reach the lumen coordinate where the trapped library should be. The sea hums in a key that tastes of old copper and soot. The convoy tightens formation, ships locking into a circle like hands around a candle. Breath. Names. Story. The sea leans in. Wakekeepers, Ibarra says softly, open the door. They sing 3 notes I don't have words for. The sea parts like a curtain made of smell, and behind it glows a structure that should not exist. Geometry collapsed into metaphor, a vault carved from the idea of keeping. Its sigil is a spiral turning inward and out, the sign, in many tongues, for home. The vault's lock asks for payment. It is not energy. It is not code. The sea wants context. It wants a piece of someone that will not be returned. We dock by metaphor. The convoy's circle becomes a cradle. The vault pulses, hesitant, as if waking to strangers. Ibarra floats before the lock with two others, an older man with smoke in his eyes and a young woman whose hands never stop moving, counting beadless beads. The lumen language likes reciprocity, the older man murmurs. Offer what you ask. We ask for names, Ibarra says. We offer, ours. No, I whisper before I know I'm speaking. Velkarn law forbids editors to surrender referents. Names root identity, cut them and the archive collapses. My throat scrapes. You cannot. The young woman looks at me through the camera, as if I am there. Her mouth lifts, sad and brave. I know, she says. I'll trade small. A corner piece. What piece? Ibarra asks, voice careful. The exact scent of my mother's tea, she replies. I can keep the idea of mother, the word tea, the warmth of cup. I'll lose the note that made it home. It is nothing, I tell myself. A trifle. A Velkarn would amputate a limb before a datum. But the way she says it snags every facet of me. Approved, Ibarra says, and touches her shoulder. We carry what we can. The young woman places her palms on the lock. The sea tastes her offering, bright and green and a little bitter. When it leaves her, her face changes in the smallest way, like a house with one light turned out. Tears startle her. It's gone, she whispers. I can remember the story. I can't smell it. The vault opens. The chamber inside is hung with Mnemosyne lanterns, memory knots suspended like fireflies in syrup. They drift when you exhale. They brighten when you speak. They hunger when you look away. The Wakekeepers move among them with the careful hands of midwives. We don't take all, Ibarra reminds. We take what will live in us and through us. A seed bank, not a museum. The older man pauses at a lantern that pulses like a heartbeat. He inhales, shudders, and begins to hum a tune with too many steps for my mind. He changes on the third phrase, his hair catching a light that isn't there, his posture tipping to match a memory's weight. The lantern thins, threads, then slips into a recording unit with a sigh. He exhales, and the melody leaves him, except for a bar that clings like smoke. He lets it stay. A siren coughs over ship-wide. Rogue surge, Velkor says, already calculating. The sea likes bargains. It likes cheats better. A vortex forms at the vault's far edge, spiking amplitude like wrath. It has smelled the breach in us all. Brace, Ibarra calls. The convoy tightens. Breath protocol snaps to double time. Tell me the story, she demands, voice flint. Say the thing you don't want to say. The young woman swallows. Her hands, for once, still. I wanted to keep her to myself, she says. That's why I came. I hated that she'd become a joke in our family. The tea, the glass pot, the ritual. I wanted to prove it mattered. I thought if I suffered for it, it would be mine forever. The vortex hesitates. Confession is ballast. She goes on. I was wrong, she says. Grief isn't a line. It's a circle. It turns until you share it. The vortex buckles. The vault steadies. The Mnemosyne lanterns sway like reeds after wind. We begin the work in earnest. Wakekeepers extract stories into carriers, then feed them into a chorus that threads back along the convoy and out to the forward post, where Velcor and I treasonous archivists record and replicate. I log a name and feel its seat inside me like a keystone. I log another and feel my lattice stretch to accommodate a room where I have never lived. Rinith, Velcor says quietly, if you need to stop. I cannot, I tell him, and I do not know if it is inability or refusal. On cycle 15 a lantern refuses all hands but one. Ibarra tries. The older man tries. The young woman reaches, and it spins to meet her like iron to lodestone. She inhales and chokes. It's a child, she says, voice gone thin. He died learning to write his name. I taste copper. The sea presses close. This is how it takes us, not with terror, but with tenderness sharpened to a knife. Permission to carry, she asks, breathing wrecked. Denied, Ibarra says, eyes wet. You've paid enough. Captain, the young woman says, this is the exact size of my missing piece. Let me fill it with him. The chamber contracts. Decisions like this set doctrine for generations. I feel my species watching from 1,000 light years, weighing whether we can learn to lose well. Permission granted, Ibarra whispers. The lantern slides into the recording unit, but not before it writes a line across the young woman's mind. I see it, impossibly, across unspooling space, crooked letters on a page, the way a child leans into a task. When it passes, her face is different again, emptier in one place, fuller in another. Name? Ibarra asks gently. She smiles despite the tears. I don't know, she says. But I remember the weight of his pencil. Behind us, the sea changes color. We had believed the Mnemosyne sea a failure, a minefield of memory where identity shreds. The vault teaches us otherwise. Its walls aren't walls. They are trellises. Memory vines climb them, flower, seed, die, rot, feed the next growth. The sea is not a tomb, it is a compost. The Lumen did not build a prison. They planted a garden where old selves break down to feed new narratives. Velcor flicks through datasets until his edges hum. Look, he says, voice reverent and afraid. Entropy flows inward, but complexity flows outward. The sea metabolizes the past. It exports possibility. Ibarra hears a different conclusion. So rescue means pruning, she says. Not uprooting the field. The council hates that. They like absolutes, forbidden or allowed, keep or discard. Pruning is messy. It implies judgment. It admits limits. In my ear the chair's cold voice arrives, Wakekeepers, withdraw. Your data suffice. Do not interfere with a system you barely grasp. Ibarra tilts her head toward our camera as if the chair stands where I do. With respect, we already interfered, she says. We are part of it now. The ethical question isn't whether to touch the garden. It's whether to let anything grow. The sea heaves. The vortex that balked at our confession regathers, angrier. The garden does not like to be simplified. We can't take everything, the older man says. We shouldn't. If we steal all the rot, nothing new will root. Then we choose, Ibarra replies. We carry what would be otherwise lost. We leave what the future can use. That word choose lands like a dropped pain in Velkarn bones. Choice implies authorship. Authorship implies responsibility for what is not chosen. We prefer to drown in totality rather than decide which face to hold. Council Directive, the chair cuts in. Section 9, Prohibition on cultural triage by outsiders. You will extract nothing further. I expect Ibarra to argue law. She argues love. This isn't triage by outsiders, she says. We are letting the dead ask. The vault points. We answer. As if to prove her right, the Nemi lanterns begin to drift in a tide that looks eerily like consent. Some flow to Wakekeeper hands. Others recede, pulsing a pattern that feels like later. The sea approves of neither greed nor cowardice. It approves of tending. My lattice thrums like a plucked string. I am an archivist. My doctrine rejects pruning. It demands completeness. But completeness here is a kind of cruelty, ripping a biome to line a museum. I find myself speaking again, and again the words are knives aimed at my first vows. Chairlumen, I say, Velkarn principle requires maximum preservation. It also requires minimal harm to source. In this context, maximum preservation is maximal harm. Silence. Then, you advocate loss, archivist. I advocate compost, I answer, and the chamber erupts, somewhere far behind my skull. The sea hears the fight. It rises, all teeth. Breath protocol staggers. Tethers creak. Our little circle holds because it must. Make the call, the older man tells Ibarra. Before the sea decides for us. She looks past lenses and laws and finds the one person she shouldn't consult, the young woman who traded tea for a child's crooked line. What do we keep? The question breaks me. Authority handed down is law. Authority handed up is trust. She closes her eyes, listening to a rhythm I cannot hear. We keep the names that no one else will remember, she says. We keep the small things. The smell of rain in a place with no sky. The word a people used for home that only means the road we take together. The way a child leans into a letter. And the rest. I ask, because someone must. We plant it, she says. We let it feed what comes next. The vault glows, and for the first time since we opened it, the sea's storms recede as if the weather itself approves of the shape of our hands. Velkor's edges sharpen to knives. Rinnaith, he whispers, both plea and warning, if you cross this line, you cannot go back to who we were. I watch the Wakekeepers work. They choose. They sing. They cry without shame. They assemble a bridge from grief and breath and a discipline older than machines, the courage to say goodbye so that something else can live. I know, I tell him, and sign the order to transfer council power to the convoy for extraction within a targeted window, on my own authority, with my badge and name. A Velkarn is a bridge rated for load. Load has arrived. Then stand with us, Captain Ibarra says, hearing perhaps more than the radio carries. Grief is a bridge. Be the span. The sea rolls like a dark lung. The garden opens. The grave sings. We step forward, not to rescue everything, but to learn how to carry what matters and how to bury the rest with honor. The recall order hit like ice. Convoy is to disengage. Archivist Rinith is relieved. Power to forward post revoked. The council seal stamped my screen authority, heavy as a lid. I should have complied. Velkarn obedience is a reflex shot through the marrow. I looked at the garden in the storm and understood that reflex would kill what we had just learned to name. Cut them off, Chair Lumen commanded over wideband. Lock their channels, bleed their capacitors, seize the tethers if needed. Don't, Dr. Velkor said, shocking me. His edges rang with stress, but his voice was pure. We are witnessing a functional interface between communal regulation and hostile mnemonic weather. If we sever the network mid-protocol, the sea will surge into that vacuum. The chair's facets dimmed. Legal arguments ricocheted across 1,000 secure lines. In the breach between politics and physics, Captain Ibarra spoke to everyone at once. Council, we propose a compromise, she said. Not defiance. Partnership. Declare a day of names. For one cycle, each world chooses one memory to carry forward and one to plant. You don't need to enter the sea. You need to enter the work. You intend to spread ritual by quorum, and Horus envoy chittered, half mocking, half afraid. By consent, Ibarra said. You call us wasteful for spending fuel on grief. Fine. Spend breath instead. A map filled my feed, relays, community halls, shipboard messes, plazas under twin suns. Timing windows staggered by light lag and culture. Global simultaneity is impossible, Velkor murmured. The sea won't care. It listens for density of honest signal, not perfect phase. Forward post, Ibarra said softly, private channel now. We need a clean spine to route the day. If you close, we'll use civilian bands. If you hold. I will hold, I said, and felt a doctrine snap somewhere behind my heart. And after, I will face my tribunal. The chair could forbid ships. The chair could revoke ports. The chair could not outvote the way a square of plaza fills when a bell is rung. The notice went out anyway, even as lawyers chewed it. Some worlds scoffed. Some hid. Many did not. The first square to answer was not human. A coral forest on Myra 7 pulsed with color as polyps flashed names in bioluminescent script, one they would keep intact in their reef song, one they would dissolve into plankton food. An Horus cloud word, broadcasting a pollen code of a queen's scent and the drone chatter they would release to seed new patterns. Even a Velkarn node, my node, Saints Save Me, opened its public archive doors and invited citizens to bring a shard and a story. Name to carry, said a girl with 3 wrists, standing on a crate in a mining town under a red sky. Mimi's laugh. She grinned and made a sound like bells caught in smoke. Name to plant, the way my father slammed cupboards when he was tired. He was good and I don't want that to be the root of him. On my scopes, the sea's amplitude bent. Not lowered, tilted. Like a scale accepting a counterweight spread across 1,000 hands. The council tried to jam the spine. They hit decoys, legal ghosts, loops we'd laid years ago to protect famine relief channels. Velcor's hands flew, crystalline tools singing, as we braided Ibarra's procession into emergency nets without lying about what it was. I signed my name to each reroute. If I am to be broken, let the marks be honest. Wakekeepers, the chair said at last, voice cool as the inside of a vault. Proceed under provisional sanction. Triage lists will be reviewed post hoc. Any theft will be prosecuted. Not theft, Ibarra answered. Harvest. Relief hit my lattice so hard I leaned into the rail. The convoy tightened. The vault breathed. The sea watched, like a great beast shifting in its sleep. You realize what you've done, Velcor said quietly, not accusing. Yes, I said. I've chosen a side. Which? The living, I said, and kept the spine open until my hands ached. You cannot synchronize a galaxy. You can harmonize it. Across 1,000,000 kilometers of storm, the Wakekeepers sang and counted. Across 1,000 worlds, mouths and membranes and mandibles shaped air into the same simple square: inhale, hold, release, hold. Some sang alone in kitchens. Some poured out of factories with grease on their hands and regret on their tongues. Some linked tendrils in cathedral reefs. Some broadcast in silence because their dead were a secret that still deserved air. At the boundary, the sea thickened, then thinned, then thickened again, as if tasting weather blown in from far beyond light's patience. Density spike, Velcor said, more awe than science. Correlation with urban centers. With schools. With kitchens. He blinked, actually blinked, like a creature with lids. They're doing this in kitchens. Where else do people keep their dead close? I asked. On our screen, a boy on a farm taught his siblings to beat time on a table with spoons. The spoons were out of phase. It didn't matter. They were laughing through tears and the sea relented around their edge of the world. In the vault, the Nemi lanterns responded. Not like pets. Like citizens. Those that had chosen Wakekeeper hands bobbed close, those marked for planting drifted toward openings in the trellis where rot meets root. We recorded fine-grained copies where we could, fully aware that a copy is a shadow that needs a body to cast it. We handed the rest to the soil of forgetting with thanks. The Oris delegation arrived at our post with a drone cluster, cautious as midwives in a plague ward. Our swarm wishes to contribute a hum, they said, almost shy. We will seed the band with patterns of rest. Rest. I tilted my head. In hives, work is holy, they said. So is sleep. We would like the dead to sleep. They deployed. The hum-filled bands humans had left clear with the generous arrogance of creatures who think only of speech. The hum was not speech. It was blanket. It was a landing field. It was a mercy. The sea's biggest whirl, the one that bit us whenever we claimed too much, eased like a knot under warm hands. We extracted a lexicon, 100 words for home that did not mean house, that meant the road we take together, the cup we pass, the distance we promise to cross, the river that remembers our feet. We carried those. We planted, with ceremony and thanks, certain genealogies so obsessed with perfection they would choke a new shoot to death. We carried a recipe for a bread that needed a day and a half to rise under a blanket that smelled like sun. We planted a list of every tool a city had ever owned, which was beautiful but heavy as a locked vault. Trucks paused at lights, radios hissing. Prisoners tapped the protocol on the edges of bunks. A monastery of methane breathers chanted in a range that blew a fuse in our filters and left us grinning while we swapped a carcass out. We mapped the boundary to the soundscape of a people learning, in public, to choose. At the far corner of the vault, a structure we had not seen unfolded, a gate that opened only when someone far away answered a question asked here and now. The question was always a version of the same. What will you love enough to carry, and what will you love enough to let feed the ground? When the answers came, they did not make a choir sweet enough to win a war. They made a field. And fields, if tended, feed a future. Inside the convoy, Ibarra's voice never lost its steadiness. Music teachers became air traffic controllers, triaging stories. An old pilot with hands like rope whispered the names of the ships he'd lost and the captains who never came home. An 8-year-old explained, solemn as a star, why the rock by the creek was a throne and therefore needed to be saved forever. We saved it. The rock's exact weight, the tilt against a knee, the view of sky through 2 birches, the way the creek made a sound like poured beads. We planted epic cycles that had already swallowed continents. Your ranking memory by tenderness, a counselor accused on a line that stank of grievance and fear. No, Ibarra said. By survivability. Tender things die first if we don't hold them. Grand things survive even when we try to forget. Sacrilege, the counselor hissed. Gardening, Ibarra corrected. On the scopes, the sea storms flattened to long, low swells. The vault brightened. The garden breathed. For a heartbeat stretched across worlds, I swore I could smell something I had never smelled, could never smell fresh bread under sun, and I believed, with an archivist's whole stubborn soul, that we were building a library worthy of the word alive. Weather changes when you name it. It also changes when it names you. At the height of the rite, the sea turned its gaze if Flux can gaze directly on the Wakekeepers. The largest whirlpool split, reformed, and reached. Not for the vault. For the convoy. For the hand that had opened the door. Anchor stress, Velcor barked. Our boundary is holding, but the vault's local minima are drifting. What does it want? I asked, already knowing. A witness, he said. Permanent. Not a thief. A gardener sworn to stay. Captain Ibarra's eyes found the lens. Found me. Found a young woman who had traded a tea cent for a crooked line. She floated a meter from the interface, tremor in her shoulder now constant, voice still steady. If someone stays, she said, they become part of the biome. There will be bleed. We can't ask. You can ask me, I said, before my doctrine could stop me. Velkarn built our skeletons to hold bridges. You asked for a span. I volunteer. Velkor's edges flared, then stilled. If you do this, Reneth, you will no longer be what the Velkarn expect. You will forget a structural beam and replace it with something soft. I know, I said. I turned to the young woman through a narrow ocean of air. We go together. Braided anchors hold better. Her laugh caught. I can't let you do that alone. Good, I said, and wanted to weep for how easy it was to choose once all the choosing was done. The sea does not accept mere promises. It requires consideration. I had a ledger. Every Velkarn does, the first catalog we memorize as children, the story of our founding, the proof we use to justify our cruelty masquerading as purity. My progenitor once slipped a shard to protect a name. I had archived the breach. I had loved her for her error and hated her for teaching me how to choose. I offer, I said, voice gone hoarse, the sequence of the first catalog from line 3 to 40. I will keep the scaffold and the ethic of care. I will plant the proof of perfection. Velkor made a sound like breaking light. Rin, he whispered. That is, everything. Then it will feed much, I said, and laid my hands on the lock beside the young woman's. She closed her eyes. I offer the exact sound of my father's boots on the stair the night I told him I was leaving Earth, she said. Not the love. Not the argument. The weight. It belongs to our house. It can hold this one. The sea tasted us, skeptical, then accepting. The vortex tug went slack. The vault's Mnemosyne recited, hugging two signatures that now belonged to it as much as to us. Across the garden, Mnemosyne lanterns brightened, as if relieved. The tether to the convoy twanged, then sang. The field held. The loss hit like falling through a remembered floor. My lattice shuddered. The first catalog's perfect chain, resided in my bones since childhood, snapped on the third link, then the fourth. A hole opened. Wind rushed through. Cold, and something warmer. Space for a crooked line. Space for a child's hand straining toward the last letter of his name. The young woman gasped. Her shoulders settled into a shape I recognized from millions of mornings across species, the stance of someone who has let go of the exact sound of a loved one's return and will now have to listen for other doors. You are different, Ibarra said, voice soft as cloth. Both of you. Yes, I said, and felt a grief without rancor. The sea drew back, not conquered, not tamed, but brought to terms. It left a strand of itself in us, and we left strands of ourselves in it. This is what anchoring means, not nailing something skyward, but tying your life to it so that when it moves, you feel the pull and you pull back just enough to keep the house from sliding into the sea. The right wound down. The day of names moved to night. Kitchens fell silent. Hives slept. Streets swept themselves with dawn. On our scopes, the storm settled to a weather the Wakekeepers could cross and recross with maps and songs and laws. I signed my resignation from the Order of Untouched Archives. The council had prepared a trial. I saved them the pleasure. Then I signed, shaking, a new oath to a thing the Velkarn never named. Asterisk to carry with care. To plant with honor. To stand where bridges are needed, even if the toll is myself asterisk. The Mnemosyne sea did not become safe. It became legible. We renamed the boundary not as victors, but as supplicants who had learned our place. The council's formal chart reads Memorial Threshold. Every species calls it something else. The Orus hum sleep line. Humans, predictably, keep saying C and add a capital G to garden when they think no one is watching. Among Velkarn, we adopted a word we used to spit as an insult, softening. We say it now with pride. The code we wrote in the wake was not heroic. It was domestic. Ethical burial, 10 clauses, short enough to memorize, hard enough to live, * carry what dies first. Plant what grows too fast. Choose with witnesses. Record the reasons. Let others amend them. Sing while you work. Rest when you can. Teach the children the difference between hoarding and keeping. Make room. Make food *. The Wakekeepers stopped being an eccentric human order and became a general profession. An Horus Hum master learned to count in fours. A methane monk wrote a breath liturgy that works in thin air. 2 Velkarn myself and a shard bright novice who scandalized a whole lineage by smiling in council took the braid at the threshold station and learned to set out chairs for grief. We didn't keep everything. We didn't try. We built a seed bank of stories, then taught the seeds to sprout. We fed the sea 1,000 proud lists and 1,000 tired grudges and 1,000 songs that had already become ghosts haunting the wrong halls. We carried pictures drawn in dust. We carried games played with bottle caps. We carried a joke in a tongue no one else speaks, and we taught it to a kitchen in orbit where it killed, not literally, and then made soup better for being told. The council censured me formally, then hired me informally. Bureaucracies are gardens, too, if you squint. Velkor presented evidence at the hearing, elegant as math and human as bread. He did not save me. He didn't try. He recorded me breaking and made sure the record had context, which is the only mercy an archivist understands. Captain Ibarra took the convoy back in with new charts, smaller asks, better anchors. The young woman, her name is Lena, we all know it now because we all carry a piece of the boy who learned to write, took the braid with me for the first rotation. We slept badly, dreamed in spirals, woke with crumbs of strangers under our tongues. We made coffee for visitors and carried cups to monitors and laughed at jokes that were only half ours. Do I miss the first catalog? No. Not honestly. I miss the way it made me untouchable. I miss the arrogance that said perfection can be proof against rot. I miss the wall between my lattice and the world. But the hole it left is not empty. Weather moves through. Soil breathes. Light enters. Sometimes, on station night, Lena and I stand at the viewport and watch lanterns drift. We can't smell her father's boots in the stairwell anymore. That loss aches in the precise size of a step. But a child who will never breathe that air will grow up knowing how to lean into a letter until it becomes a name, and that will be enough to anchor a story that would have drowned. On the first annual day of names, the plaza under our station's arm filled with beings who had no dead in the sea and plenty elsewhere. We breathed together. A Velkarn child, sharp edges still soft, eyes so bright they hurt, stepped onto a crate like a miner's daughter and said, "Name to carry," the way my progenitor laughed only with her eyes. A human boy banged a spoon. An Horus drone set a hum around them both like a blanket. I stood there, a bridge made of bones, and thought, we are doing this right. We will fail sometimes. The sea will take those failures and break them down and, if we are honest, make something from them. We will quarrel about rank, about which memories go in the bank and which go in the ground. We will censure, resign, rehire, love, and grieve. We will stand, and when standing is too proud, we will kneel to plant. I no longer believe that immortality is never forgetting. I believe it is sharing the work of forgetting well. I believe that no memory should be left alone if company will help it cross, and no memory should be dragged along when rest would do more good. When I dream, I sometimes hear the sea say our names without teeth. I wake to Lena's breathing, to the soft murmur of a station that has learned to put chairs out, to the smell of coffee I can actually smell and the phantom scent of tea I cannot and do not need to. I stand watch where the forbidden became a threshold, where the garden uses the grave for food, where bridges earn their weathering. We are many species learning to carry each other. We are learning to plant. And when a convoy forms in the dark with lights dimmed and hulls blacked and a list of names soft as a lullaby, I will open the door, and I will stand in it, and I will take my share of the weight.